Have you ever felt exhausted by the cycle of promising yourself this time will be different, only to find yourself caught in the same old spiral, coldly withdrawing one moment, pleading and clinging the next until you're emotionally drained? You wonder, why do my heart and mind keep fighting each other, preventing me from finding any balance? That confusion, loneliness, and frustration cling to you, even after reading dozens of articles and watching countless videos without discovering how to break free. You're not alone. Deep within you operates a psychological mechanism known as fearful avoidant attachment, where you oscillate between retreating into logical detachment and erupting into desperate emotional need. This very fluctuation becomes your blind spot, keeping the two sides of you from ever aligning toward a stable outcome. Picture this. One moment you're meticulously analyzing every word and glance, reminding yourself, stay rational. Then, in the next heartbeat, your chest burns with longing as you await a text or a reassuring word. When it doesn't come, you switch to icy indifference, as if nothing matters anymore. That painful past clings on, and you bounce between extremes, perpetuating the same heartache over and over. If you're ready to face this hidden blind spot, keep watching. In the next few minutes, you'll uncover the secret behind fearful avoidant attachment and learn the first steps to gradually integrate your emotions and logic, ending the cycle of emotional eruptions and emotional shutdowns. This is the starting point of a journey toward peaceful love, where you no longer have to tear yourself apart between two conflicting halves. Instead, you can enter relationships fully and authentically as your true self. First and foremost, to truly grasp the blind spot at the heart of the fearful avoidant attachment style, we need to revisit how human attachment mechanisms operate across three primary modes: avoidant, anxious, and the unique hybrid, fearful avoidant. The avoidant type is governed by rationality. They cloak themselves in a shell of emotional detachment, steering clear of intense feelings they perceive as risky and unsafe. When relationship stress arises, they tend to withdraw, erecting barriers and reminding themselves, I must stay in control, which gradually dulls their capacity to recognize and heed their own emotional currents. Conversely, the anxious type leans entirely into emotional experience, placing personal feelings above logical reasoning. They become unsettled without constant reassurance, cling to their partner for validation, and any small uncertainty can trigger panic or the dread of rejection, leaving them profoundly vulnerable. Then there is the fearful avoidance style, a paradoxical fusion of these extremes. You wield the analytical tools to scrutinize every detail, and you possess the sensitivity to feel emotional tremors deeply, yet you lack the skill to synchronize both faculties simultaneously. One moment you may make decisions grounded purely in logic. The next, you find yourself engulfed in an overwhelming emotional craving. This does not make you a bad version of yourself. It creates a blind spot where heart and mind never align, forcing you to oscillate indefinitely between two poles. The solution is not merely to compensate for the weaker side, as an avoidant might seek to embrace emotion, or an anxious might try to cultivate rationality, but to integrate both elements, allowing the heart to listen while the mind analyzes in order to reach balanced decisions. Reflecting on this series, you will see that the fearful avoidance style carries a hidden advantage: dual ears, ready to absorb both emotional and cognitive information. The challenge lies in transforming that advantage into a strength rather than a barricade. In the minutes ahead, you will uncover the defining traits, benefits, and pitfalls of all three attachment styles. And most importantly, you will begin to see the pathway to integration, unlocking the door to secure, stable, and authentic relationships like never before. In the previous section, we established a solid foundation on the three primary attachment styles: avoidant, anxious, and fearful. Avoidant. Now, let's delve deeply into the two opposing extremes represented by avoidant and anxious, so we can understand why integrating both is crucial for those with a fearful avoidance style. Avoidant individuals prioritize logic and control when navigating romantic relationships. They tend to suppress or detach themselves from emotions, fearing that vulnerability will lead to hurt. When faced with stress or conflict, they immediately withdraw. They go silent, keep their distance, or even cut off communication, reminding themselves, I must stay clear-headed. This cold exterior helps them avoid perceived risks of betrayal, but it also leaves their partners feeling abandoned, lonely, and hurt, ultimately undermining depth and genuine connection over time. In contrast, anxious individuals are driven by a craving for emotional connection. They place personal feelings at the forefront and heavily depend on reassurance and attention from their partner. A delayed text or a moment of silence can trigger panic. Did I do something wrong? They constantly monitor their partner's status and share intense emotions to keep the bond alive. While this mechanism initially fosters closeness, in the long run, it can overwhelm the partner, who may feel pressured and suffocated, leading them to pull away. The contrast between these two extremes is stark. Avoidants lack emotional attunement, while anxious types lack healthy boundaries. Previously, we suggested that avoidants practice emotional awareness techniques like mindfulness, meditation, journaling to express their inner world, and honest sharing with loved ones. For anxious individuals, we encourage them to adopt a more objective perspective, keep a record of their partner's behaviors, seek feedback from friends or professionals, and maintain personal hobbies to prevent losing themselves in the relationship. So, what about fearful avoidant individuals? They possess both capacities, the analytical skills of avoidance and the deep sensitivity of anxious types, yet they don't know how to operate both simultaneously. They fall into an on-off pattern. When the logical gear runs too fast, the emotional gear stops. When emotions erupt, logic freezes. The result is constant fatigue, confusion, and the recurring question, why can't I find balance? Why can't I listen to my heart and heed my mind at the same time? This brings us to the next section, where we will explore the very essence of fearful avoidant attachment, how these two strategies intersect, conflict, and, most importantly, how to transform this blind spot into a source of strength, allowing you to enter relationships with harmony between emotion and reason. The essence of the fearful avoidant attachment style lies in possessing both strengths simultaneously. A razor-sharp mind capable of dissecting every situation and deep emotional sensitivity that allows you to feel joy and pain intensely, yet not knowing how to operate these strengths in tandem. Imagine one day you sit at your computer, methodically listing the pros and cons of your relationship, making decisions based on clear numbers and logic, thinking, this is the best choice for both of us. Yet, just hours later, a delayed text or a perceived cold glance triggers an emotional explosion. Your confidence vanishes, replaced by anxiety, worry, and despair. You might send dozens of messages seeking reassurance, only to then switch to mood of shutting down completely, deleting contacts, turning off your phone, and walking away to protect yourself from further hurt. This uncontrolled oscillation doesn't happen just once. It can repeat dozens of times a day. For example, in the morning you resolve, I must keep my distance to protect myself, focusing on work with icy efficiency, even asking friends to remind your partner not to message you too late. By afternoon, a quiet moment with a sad song on your playlist leaves you feeling an emptiness in your chest, compelling you to call or visit your partner in search of comfort. You might text, "Do you still love me?" Or, "Why are you so silent today?" If the response doesn't come immediately, you spiral into fear and sleepless nights. Yet once you receive that reply, you abruptly switch to, "I don't need anyone," telling yourself, "I'm fine, I don't want to bother them." This emotional whiplash exhausts you mentally and leaves your partner bewildered, never sure which version of you they're encountering. Why does this occur? Your instinct tells you that logic will protect you from mistakes. It's safe, precise, measurable. Emotions, on the other hand, can guide you toward authentic experiences, but can also plunge you into despair. Most people choose one pole or the other. Avoidants withdraw under stress, whereas anxious types cling when feeling insecure. You, however, do both, yet you have not learned how to coordinate them. You don't dare fully trust your feelings, wary of pain, nor do you dare fully let go of logic, fearing regret. As a result, you remain stuck in the middle, belonging to neither extreme, like a castaway stranded between two shores, unable to find solid ground. This sense of being unmoored creates a blind spot in your psyche, a gap you don't notice until it erupts. Each time you believe you've mastered your avoidant side or your anxious side, the other resurfaces with greater force, like a survival reflex. The harder you suppress it, the more fiercely it emerges. It's akin to pushing a sponge underwater. When released, it bursts upward with energy. In relationships, this leads to sudden flare-ups, sometimes explosive anger, sometimes debilitating fear, prompting tears, yelling, or total emotional shutdown. Witnessing these two versions of you, your partner feels hurt, confused, and uncertain of your sincerity. This erratic flip-flopping makes you an enigma to others and remains a dark mystery to yourself. You wonder, why can't I be like everyone else, choosing only one extreme? The answer lies in the fact that you embody both extremes but haven't learned to integrate, regulate, and allocate energy between them. Integration doesn't mean diminishing one side. It means knowing when to activate logic, when to tune into your emotions, and most critically, how to transition smoothly between the two without letting either dominate completely. In the sample video, the creator illustrates this by flipping back and forth between rational analysis and emotional upheaval, inducing a sense of chaos for viewers. Our goal now is not only to identify these flips, but to become aware of what you lose and gain with each one, so you can start learning how to maintain both attitudes simultaneously. At this point, we've delved deeply into the fearful avoidant nature, the flip-flop cycle between logic and emotion, and how it exhausts and confuses both you and your partner. Now that you fully grasp how these two extremes operate within you, we will uncover the true blind spot, why this flip-flop cycle not only creates chaos, but also traps you in repeating the same old relationship mistakes, and explore how to break that cycle and transform your approach to attachment forever. Following our in-depth exploration of the fearful avoidant nature, we now delve into the operational blind spot mechanism, how your mind and heart are compartmentalized, twisted, and then erupt uncontrollably. Instead of learning to accept both parts of yourself, you unknowingly build two sealed chambers, one for rigid reasoning, where you hide all intense emotions you deem risky, and another for overwhelming feelings, where you suppress any logical thought that might expose your vulnerabilities. This very separation forms the blind spot. You fail to recognize the void until the pressure mounts to its breaking point. In theory, you might reassure yourself, I will balance these two sides, but in practice, you usually choose only one. Either you become silent and cold like an impenetrable wall, or you erupt into waves of desperate clinging that your partner cannot handle. Your reasoning whispers, don't let emotions hijack your decisions. They can hurt you, while your emotions scream, I need love and closeness to feel alive. This unspoken conflict intensifies internal pressure like two springs compressed from both ends, just waiting for a weak point to snap. At the most ordinary of moments, say, the first argument or a major life upheaval, all pent-up energy suddenly surges. You might lash out with piercing words that stun your partner, or collapse into tears and despair. These aren't calculated moves, but survival reflexes. When reasoning overloads, it unleashes raw emotion. Or when emotions are suppressed long enough, they burst forth destructively. Only then do you realize, oh, that's the blind spot I never saw. But by that point, it's too late to fix it before the emotional storm has passed. After such eruptions, many retreat into self-isolation, creating distance, telling themselves, I need time to calm down. Yet this action merely perpetuates the blind spot cycle. You slide back into emotional withdrawal, forgetting to express your true needs. Once you feel secure again, you seek closeness anew, and the freeze-explode cycle resumes, leaving both you and your partner drained, unsettled, and sometimes doubting the relationship's viability. To break this mechanism, the first step is to identify those two sealed chambers, reason and emotion within yourself. When you clearly see each signal, silence versus outburst, anxiety versus tension, you stop labeling them as personal failures and instead treat them as internal alerts demanding attention. Next, rather than suppressing or isolating, you learn to open the valves gradually. When you feel pressured by logic, allow emotions to trickle out via journaling or body-centered meditation. When emotions run wild, practice pausing, using breath and reasoning to observe yourself without reacting instantly. Over time, you'll no longer be caught off guard by emotional explosions. Instead, you'll maintain equilibrium, your heart and mind coexisting and functioning in harmony. Having understood the blind spot mechanism, how these two chambers in you generate pressure and sudden eruptions, the next stage will present practical solutions. Specific habits and exercises to integrate emotion and reason, master your reactions, and cultivate a secure, enduring attachment style. Having understood the blind spot mechanism that triggers your oscillation between reason and emotion, what unfolds in your relationship? The consequences manifest as a series of chaotic and disappointing moments. You lose stability, easily tossing blame onto your partner as a way to release internal pressure. When logic dominates, you say, "You never listen to me." When emotion takes over, you break down in tears and declare, "I can't take this anymore." Although you don't truly want to fault anyone, your avoidant side protects your ego by pointing out your partner's mistakes, while your anxious side magnifies pain to secure attention. Your partner stands between two volleys. One side feels attacked, the other suffocated by constant demands. This leads to a repetitive cycle often described as strive, explode, break up, reconcile. Initially, you make earnest efforts to change. You schedule honest talks, attend couples therapy, or try new communication strategies. At times, the relationship shows real promise, and hope is rekindled. Then a misunderstanding or work stress reactivates your blind spot, and you lose your composure again. Every lofty promise, "It won't happen again," crumbles before another emotional eruption or paralyzing withdrawal. After repeatedly trying for your sake, your partner grows weary. They no longer know which version of you they're with, avoidant or anxious. This fatigue drives them to distance, raise boundaries, or even consider ending the relationship for self-preservation. Following a breakup, you may rush to reconcile, apologize, vow to change, profess your love. You rebuild hope together, believing this time will be different. But at the first sign of stress, your ingrained pattern resurfaces and the strive-explode cycle restarts. This loop not only drains your mental energy, but also erodes your self-confidence and trust. You begin doubting your capacity to love and question whether you deserve happiness. Your partner's patience likewise wears thin, shifting them from a supportive companion to someone teetering on the brink of departure. With each iteration, old wounds deepen rather than heal. You can be haunted by memories of arguments and emotional distance, affecting other relationships with friends, family, and even at work. As trust is chipped away, you become guarded, reluctant to be vulnerable. Prolonged pressure can lead to depression, anxiety, and a sense of isolation, even after escaping the toxic relationship. Nevertheless, you are not a failure. Recognizing the strive, explode, break up, reconcile cycle is the first step to escaping it. When you accept that each failure is not the end, you can stop forcing yourself to be better only to implode again. Instead, learn to view each stage of the cycle as a signal for what needs care. The striving phase is for nurturing the bond. The explosion phase is for practicing regulation. The breakup phase is for self-reflection. And reconciliation is for constructing a firmer foundation. Following our detailed look at the consequences of the blind spot in relationships, we now move to the general solution. Integrating both sides, a method that does not involve suppressing and separating reason and emotion, but rather learning to operate both streams of information in harmony. First, you must identify when you are over-prioritizing one side. Observe yourself. When do you start to rationalize every situation, focusing solely on data, numbers, and cold logic? And when do you get swept away by the emotional flow, acting on the heart's impulses, prone to cling or panic? Only once you are aware of this bias can you begin to control the transition between the two states. Second, you need to learn to use emotion when empathy is required and use reason when analysis is needed. For instance, in an important conversation with your partner, instead of reacting immediately to emotion, anger, or clinginess, pause for a few seconds to breathe deeply. Ask, "What am I feeling?" and then choose words that convey your feelings gently. Conversely, when facing a major decision, choosing a home, handling finances, planning your future, engage your logical mind. Gather information, weigh pros and cons, consult objective friends, and deliberate before making your final choice. Third, strive to maintain both streams of information side by side. This means that even when you feel upset or anxious, you still note both the feeling and the facts, possibly recording them together. For example, if you're hurt by your partner being late, write, "I feel disappointed," emotion. "They were 30 minutes late," event. Combining them helps you avoid acting solely on the emotional level while ignoring rational context. When making decisions whether to apologize, propose another meeting, or pause the conversation, you do so based on both. "I feel disappointed, but I understand they may have had an emergency." To turn this solution into a habit, you need daily practice. Here's a basic checklist. For those leaning avoidant, body-centered meditation. Each morning or evening, spend 5-10 minutes sitting quietly, focusing on your breath and bodily sensations, the seat beneath you, ambient sound. The aim is to reconnect with the emotions you often ignore. Emotion journaling. Each morning or afternoon, spend 5 minutes listing 3 main emotions you've experienced, with brief reason. For example, "Today I felt anxious because the important email wasn't replied to." Small sharing. Find a support group, online or in person, or a close friend to discuss your feelings at least once a week. Sharing helps you practice using emotions safely, without fear of judgment. For those leaning anxious, objective journaling. Each night, write briefly in the format, "Date, I felt, because," for example, "On 9/23, I felt insecure because they didn't respond to my message." This practice builds a habit of asking analytical questions rather than purely emotional reactions. Seek feedback from friends divided by therapist. Share your objective journal or specific situations and ask, "Was my reaction reasonable? What could I do differently?" at least once a week. Maintain at least 2-3 personal activities. Sports, drawing, reading. These activities help you sustain your personal life, avoiding total immersion in the relationship. When you practice these steps consistently, emotion and reason become tempered, no longer two opposing boulders, but supportive parts of a unified whole. Emotions provide energy and meaning. Reason provides guidance and regulation. Over time, you will make safe, balanced decisions, neither fanatic in emotion nor icy in logic. When you truly master integrating emotion and reason, you'll notice your mood swings subside and your mind opens, allowing heart and logic to guide every decision together. This harmonious combination empowers you to confidently plan for the long term, and your relationship will no longer be disrupted by breakup, reconcile cycles. Instead, it will be anchored by a strong bond, built on mutual understanding and respect. So, start today. First, identify your blind spot. Next, persistently practice integrating emotion and reason. And finally, maintain daily habits until this becomes second nature. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment whether you lean avoidant or anxious. I can't wait to hear your story. Thank you and see you in the next video.